War has come to Middle-earth. I think it was only you who put yourself in my power. Galadriel.
First off, congratulations. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Sam. Morfydd, I'm going to start with you. I'm curious, what kind of conversations did you have with the showrunners about what it feels like for Galadriel to put the ring on and how it would have to change how she carried herself in the show?
Yeah, so there were lots of discussions about this that I was just obsessed with it because it is so interesting, this idea that they don't know how it's going to affect them and how quickly does it. Like, there's so many choices that could be made. And I don't want to give too much away for what we decided about. But I loved having those conversations. And it's also just, I love asking people what they think they'd be like if they had a ring of any kind. And, you know, she's taking a big risk. And she's also taking a risk when she knows that she isn't as without fault as she once thought. So there's a recklessness and a bravery and a kind of fool's hope, which I like about it.
Great success. The idea of putting the ring on and what it might do to me has definitely burrowed its way into my brain. Here's the question for both of you, because I'm curious how your answers might differ on this one. Okay. So obviously, both of your characters do not like Sauron. So at the start of season 2, for each of them individually, what do you think they fear about him and what he's capable of most?
Well, I think Galadriel fears destruction and pain. Something I love about Tolkien's world is how the earth and nature is so important. And I think that's something that Galadriel will become more and more connected with until we eventually see her in Lothlorien. And so it's kind of the fear of not just kind of the elves being destroyed, but also kind of just a little ant in Middle-earth being hurt by him. What about you?
Yeah, well, I think there's there's the threat of Sauron, but there's also on a personal level that he's this great deceiver, and he has, made you feel like he's your salvation at one point before, quite recently, for Galadriel, and a long time ago for Adar. And, so the twist of the knife is the worst that it could possibly be, because you've trusted someone. He's tricked you into trusting him and then has completely abused that. And what you end up with is feeling just like, your world is kind of destroyed. The rug's pulled out from you. It's like the worst kind of gaslighting ever. Yeah. And then, you're stuck with the consequences of whatever that is. And so we pick up at the beginning of season 2, as Morfydd was saying, our characters have that one thing in common, which is we've both been horribly abused by Sauron. We don't really, apart from that, we've got nothing in common. So the bond that we have is like the worst shared experience. Yeah. But we'll take it.
Way to describe it, but it makes all the sense.
But it's all we got, so yeah.
I obviously don't want to spoil anything, but I want to highlight all the good that's to come in season 2 for folks out there. So for each of you, which season 2 episode are you most excited for fans to see, and can you tease why?
This isn't a cop-out. I think I really like episode 1 simply because it's sort of like an all-hands-on-deck thing.
Yeah.
He's back, and everybody has to kind of just jump up and start thinking and doing immediately. But there are lots of things and lots of other episodes. I mean, there's so much that happens in this season. There's so many kind of events and twists and turns that it is really difficult to choose a specific one.
I would say episode 6 there's really no going back after that.
Are you saying that because I'm not in episode 6? Is that why you're saying it? Maybe I am. I can't remember which one's which.
This is the work of Sauron.
All All right, Charlie, I'm going to come your way first. So we obviously see Sauron change forms in season 2, and it did make me wonder, as his appearance changes, are there any particular things or ideas that you always hold tight to just to make sure he remains a fully consistent character?
Definitely. And I think he has the same internal world as Halbrand. And I think the relationship with Celebrimbor is the thing that I really held on to, and that is it's sparked in that forge scene in the 8th episode, and it's this idea that we see at the very start of the show as power not of the flesh but over flesh. That is his means to an end, and the end goal is to heal and rehabilitate Middle-earth. And I tried to keep that as the core of the character throughout the changing forms, I guess.
Did want to throw a question to both of you about working together, because you've got a number of electric scenes in the episodes that I've seen. In particular, the end of episode 2 sticks out in my brain. So for each of you, can you tell me something about the other as a scene partner that you appreciated and maybe helped you reach something in your own character that you wouldn't have been able to without him?
I'll start.
Go on.
I really appreciate, the obvious things that come forth are like Charlie's generosity as an actor, which is the thing that, is most important, I think. But I really liked the relationship and how we established this sense of levity. Charlie makes it feel very easy as a performer playing opposite him, because the subject matter is so dark and can be quite intense. But I think a lot of the magic and spontaneity that happened was as a consequence of I learned a lot from working with Charlie about keeping things light and not getting dragged down into being all angry all the time.
I would say the same about. Thank you, Charlie, for that. I would say exactly the same about Charlie. It's all to do with respect, and if you, it's unspoken. There's stuff that when you don't want to talk about the scene, or you don't. And you just know that neither of you need to, and you just do it. That's the best. When you trust each other implicitly, you trust each other's work, and you respect each other's work. It just plays, and then you discover as you go. And we may talk briefly about it afterwards, but we don't. We didn't get kind of really, because it was just happening, and that was one of the main reasons of why that season 2 was such a joy to do.
So, Charles, I want to lean into Celebrimbor for my last question here, because obviously he is it's a very tough situation at the start of season 2, and I just really appreciated how much the internal conflict he's experiencing comes through in your performance.
Thank you.
What do you think is driving his decisions most at this point? Is it kind of like an eagerness for his work to be recognized and respected, a genuine desire to help, fear? What is it?
There's something about him that even though elves live forever, he feels something is running out. There's sand. The sand is trickling away, and that drives him to make these decisions, which he possibly otherwise shouldn't. However, they have sparked, I believe, that Sauron's spell, even in the guise of Halbrand in episode 8 of season 1, was cast in that first meeting in the Forge, and the exchange of the piece of mithril and that little scene that was there between them. The die is cast. The spell is cast at that point. And but I think he's chasing his tail. I think he's chasing after something that he's desperate to achieve, and he's kind of leaps on this. This opportunity arises, and although he's reluctant, he's very seduced by him. So, yeah, that's what's going on with him.
At this moment, the great tale of our age is being written.
Daniel, I want to come your way first because, of course, a very hot topic of conversation with your character is his powers. So I was wondering, what kind of conversations did you have with JD and Patrick in terms of how much power he has access to at the beginning of season 2, and also where those limitations lie?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't think he has explored that sort of internally. I don't think he's sort of thought about how full his fuel tank is or how much more he's got to go. I think he genuinely, through season 1, has only really experienced what he thinks or what he feels he needs to give in any given moment. And suddenly in season 2, we have the moment by the well with the sandstorm, where I think he feels that he's learnt a few lessons, and he's got this bit of wood that seems to be a conduit of energy, and it's going to be really helpful. And I think we see him give more energy than he's ever experienced before and suddenly realize that he has no control over it. Like, it's gone way too far. And so for me, the answer to your question is, I think he still doesn't know, and hopefully we're going to see more of that as the season progresses. And hopefully he starts soon to learn how to use it and not to be so darn dangerous.
Describing it as a fuel tank makes all that much sense to me. I feel like that puts it into perspective much more than it ever has before. I know you're not going to be able to answer this right now, if you even have the answer, but I was kind of curious. Did they reveal who the stranger actually is to you? Do you have that information while playing the mystery now?
I feel like they've always been really open with me about who they think he is at any given moment, because he hasn't lived any of the future yet. And so what we've seen in his present is a bit like my life in my present, or maybe yours in your present. You only know what you've lived. You can't possibly know what the future's come. I feel like I can be really authentic with him because I've been in the present, and working with these two has been phenomenal. Like, it's been such a joy to work with Markella and Megan. Their ability to be in the present and to act, in such. I feel like I'm acted off the screen every time I'm with them, but at least I can try and keep up with you. That's where I've been.
You're way ahead of
us. You danced around that a little bit, but I respect it. Right now. Markella and Megan, big question for both of you, because obviously your characters have been through a whole lot in season 1 and have quite the journey ahead of them in season 2. And the thing I was wondering about most is, how is that pressure going to impact their friendship? Is it something that, could test them in new ways and draw them apart, or perhaps bring them closer together?
I think both.
Yeah.
I think that it tests them and it brings them closer together. I think they really are like family to each other, and so there's no real filtering of how they feel and how they express themselves around each other. So how that manifests, you see whenever they're in they're given circumstances, and then when they meet and encounter the stores, you really see how it challenges them both and how they challenge each other. Yeah. But they also show up for each other in a really lovely way.
Yeah, the wonderful thing about their friendship is that the foundation is so strong, and already was at the beginning of season 1. So that only grows and continues, but that is already so deep and within them. That's not going anywhere.
I can't handle a rift between the two of them, so I'm so glad that was your answer. I'll turn that towards them as individuals now. On this journey that they're about to go on, this battle that they're about to go into, can you each tell me what you think their greatest strength on this mission is going to be, but also their greatest weakness, the thing that could possibly do them in?
I think for Nori, her curiosity is both. It's both her strength and her hubris. I feel like for her, I really love how inquisitive she is and how much she wants to learn, but I also feel that sometimes that really she kind of just does what she wants to do, and it can put a lot of others around her in danger. So I think that it's both. It's both a blessing and a bit of a curse to be that inquisitive.
Yeah. I think for Poppy, her sense of belonging is such a wonderful thing, but she's also still constantly trying to find it. And I think that's the thing that definitely drives her, and that's why she holds so much weight and responsibility for these two characters. But I think also, that can... sometimes it can sort of tip you over the edge if that's the only thing that you're constantly thinking about, is making sure that your home... these two, especially Nori represents home for her. And so sometimes if anything can sort of shake that, then that can be detrimental.
Every soul in Middle-earth is in peril.
Ben, you're getting my first question. It's a biggie. What kind of conversations did you have with the showrunners about what it would feel like for Gil Galad to put the ring on, and how it would have to change how he carries himself?
We have to forget what we know as fans and as actors. The experience of, we know what they do, we know what they're capable of, but there's almost a bit of naive hope. I mean, this is the last-ditch effort. This is the last grain of sand of hope. Otherwise, we have to abandon Middle Earth, that it is inevitable. And how does it change you? We don't know. It's almost like this is a terrible analogy, but like a child trying drugs for the first time, where you're like, you shouldn't do that. Don't wait. You'll never be the same.
Cut to a biopic.
Yeah, exactly. Gil Gallad's on the rocks. He's lost his way. But that they don't know what we know. So that kind of suspense is important, and those were the conversations we had.
Hindsight 2020.
That was my exact reaction when the rings were put on, so you pretty much nailed it.
Oh, great.
I want to pose this question to both of you, because your characters are both leaders, but in two completely different sections of the show. What would you say it meant to each of them to be a good leader at the very beginning of Rings of Power, and how has that definition changed based on what they went through in season 1?
I mean, being a good leader, I'm not sure that he ever saw himself as a good leader or a leader at all, and I think that's what he just rose to that occasion as we went, and then he found himself as a leader at the end of all of that, but beginning of second season, he is seen as a leader. So now there is a big responsibility of people are looking up to him. There's promises that have been made, and it's like, do you step up to this? Do you step up, or do you go, make a left, make a right? I think it's a humongous existential question that is that he has, and that he grapples with as the season goes, and essentially that's like my storyline as we go in the season.
I think what's great about his leadership is that he's exhibiting mercy in some way. That he's resisting the urge to say "I told you so," and letting others figure it out for themselves. He's kind of like a parent. You got yourself up in that tree. Now let's see you get yourself down. And in that way, it helps them manifest who they're going to become. And also, I think probably in his private time, leaves him pretty frustrated. I told you. What is it?
Yeah, I'm just thinking one thing. Like, I just, as you're talking, I actually think he rejects leadership quite a bit. Like, at every turn, he always defers to the person that wants to have it. He's a leader, no question. But he's like, Galadriel comes and he lets her have it. The other one comes, he lets her have it. Even though he does all of the work of opening the jar. Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Yeah. I listened it for you.
Not wrong about that.
I mean, you know what I mean.
I will not stop until this is put right.
Every soul in the seen or unseen world will know that it was you who was the architect of their demise.
First off, congratulations on the first 3 episodes. I am dying to see more.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
Thank you. So, big question to start with here. I'm sure you're very excited to further develop all of the storylines for your characters, but of the bunch, which character's season 2 arc wound up being more creatively fulfilling for you two to craft than you ever could have imagined at the start?
Well, I have to repeat back, what you said, which is that truly it's like they're all our babies, all the storylines, and we love them equally. Mm-hmm. But I think we're all especially proud of the storyline between Celebrimbor and Sauron this season. Season 2 is all about Sauron. He is, has a plan for world domination, but it requires that he distribute rings of power to each of the races of Middle-earth, and he cannot build them without the elven Da Vinci Celebrimbor. So we have these 2 incredible actors in Charlie Vickers as Sauron and Charles Edwards as Celebrimbor, and their season goes to places I think people aren't ready for in this show. It's quite dark. It's quite psychological. It is a descent into madness.
It may shock you.
It may even shock you. And their performances, we reckon are just spectacular. We all just stood agog looking at the monitors every day. That story has turned out so beautifully, and I think we're all really proud of it and excited to share their work with the world.
Literally spent most of my interview with the 2 of them gushing over a particular scene in these first 3 episodes. So now I cannot wait to see more of the 2 of them.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Just wait till they get
going.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's the meet cute.
So I'm very excited about more of them, but there's also a whole lot of Tom Bombadil hype right now. So I was wondering, did you two always know he was going to make his debut in season 2, or was there any kind of workshopping in terms of figuring out when and why to incorporate him?
That is really interesting. So JD, my partner and co-showrunner, and I, from the very beginning, one of the first things we did when we were so lucky to get the job working on the show was to just do a word, web on a wall, a whiteboard of everything that is in Middle Earth in the Second Age. And Tom Bombadil got up there pretty quick. And the idea that we might stumble across him hopefully in the most unexpected, delightful place and way imaginable was always out there. And when we were thinking about the stranger and Nori, they have a journey into the unknown in Rune, a part of the map that's never been on screen before in Tolkien. And the idea that maybe he's out there and maybe there's some trouble out there that, he's been monitoring and that maybe he would help nudge the stranger in the right direction became too delightful to ignore. And we were so lucky. Our amazing casting director, Theo Park, found Rory Kinnear, who is, just pure magic in the part. And he shows up in the 4th episode, spoiler. So you're almost there, but we think people are really going to be excited to see what he does with it.
Oh, I'm so hyped. So I wanted to ask one big series roadmap question, because I love how when you're making television, you're able to learn and discover new things every single step of the way. So now having made both seasons 1 and seasons 2, what would you say is the greatest impact or change in your series long roadmap for Rings of Power?
Well, so JD and I had a plan from the beginning, and 2 down, in terms of seasons. The plan is still the plan. But I would say that working with so many amazing collaborators and these incredible actors inspires new ideas. For example, just to take a small thing, Morfydd Clark, who plays our Galadriel, who is phenomenal. We love her. She's kind of carrying us all on her back sometimes. Is a great comedienne. And the idea of and she wants to sing. Okay, well then those are registers that would be great to get her in. Elves sing. Galadriel, has a very dry sense of humor. And so those are aspects of her character that, maybe might come out more because we know that she can hit that fastball. And so seeing talents and aspects, Ben Walker sings in the 1st episode. I don't know that Gil-galad would have ever sung, except that Ben is a song and dance man, Juilliard-trained song and dance man, and we were determined to take advantage of that. So if anything, it's just noticing talents and hoping to take advantage of them and, take benefit from that.